When you're in high school, everyone always says to just be yourself. But there's a reason no one follows that advice. We're just too obsessed with going all the way, doing the business, shagging, boning, screwing, making whoopee, chugging the choo-choo, playing patty cake, riding the trolley. Long story short, being yourself in high school is just too damn hard in more ways than one. This is Superbad.
Jesus Christ, man. You had me at making whoopee.
Making
That's
what?
where it was for me.
Playing patty cake, playing patty cake was my invention. I didn't look that up.
Playing patty cake.
Most of them were just like thesaurus.com sex, like, but it
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
like playing patty cake was my invention. I was excited because I was like, it seems like I'm gonna go that self-serious route of like being yourself in high school. What's that like? And then I was like, let's just think of like synonyms for having sex. Do you have any?
Yep. Okay, so I did always really like making whoopee. Bumping uglies was
Bumping
one too.
uglies. That's a good one.
I don't know. I'm pretty boring when it comes to that sort of thing. I didn't have cool phrases for it.
I don't think they're cool.
I wish I could have some. That'd be way more exciting.
Yeah, because that's what it is. Making whoopee's a cool phrase. That's what all the cool kids use. Okay, this is very exciting. This was just such a fun movie. This didn't feel like homework at all.
Yeah, I know. This is one of by far my favorite teen comedy. You can speak for yourself on this one if it's yours.
Is it your favorite comedy?
Favorite comedy? Probably. It's up there.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it scratches, because like I want to say like, Airplane or like
No.
types of movies.
You don't have to say best. I'm here to ask you, like, is this your personal favorite?
I think Airplane's still my personal favorite.
Okay.
But when it comes to like Superbad would be a close second by far.
Okay.
I think it's like the only teen comedy I really, really am fond of too, because I'm not big on the raunchy comedies.
Okay, so like, I think we both like American Pie, but I think we like it as like an artifact because we look at it as like this doesn't age well at all, but it's kind of very silly. And there's some jokes that Stifler says that are funny.
Yeah, and Eugene Levy is just iconic in it too.
Yeah. So we look at it as like this early 2000s artifact kind of. But Superbad, is just like actually a really good movie.
Oh yeah, it's great. It has like heart to it. It has characters that make progress as people.
It's wild too because like this concept just shouldn't age well at all. You know what I mean? And I think we've seen like examples of other teen raunchy sex comedies that haven't. So like to you, why is this movie so timeless?
I think, well, okay, there's several reasons. I've seen video essays that even study like how even the 70s aesthetic of it, of having all the, the funky disco music in the background.
It's such like a wild choice too.
Yeah, it has like the world that it's set in has this overall kind of Napoleon Dynamite / Richard Linklater kind of feel to it.
Why Napoleon Dynamite?
Because Napoleon Dynamite also feels like it's set in its own kind of time capsule. It's not really adhered to a certain, it doesn't follow like, oh, social media, yada, yada. It's very like just basic teenagers awkwardly interacting with each other.
Yeah, that's true. Because like the only thing I think about that, like maybe makes me wonder what it would have been like if this movie was made in 2024 was like, they could have easily called an Uber or something like that. And but that's like kind of it. Like there's a lot of things in this movie that I bet like a lot of high schoolers can still watch and relate to. But at the same time, like there's something that feels nostalgic about this movie not in just like I used to watch this when I was younger, but I remember listening to the Rewatchables when they did an episode on this, and they were talking about like you watch high school movies and appreciate them once you're out of high school. You're not really watching high school movies as like, oh, I'm in this right now. This is very relatable. And so it's either like you're in middle school and you're watching a high school John Hughes movie and you're just like, wow, that's what it's like. That's crazy.
Mean Girls was that for me, just to jump in on that.
Same. I think, well, you and I are of that generation too, where Mean Girls was like, it's that insane? And in some ways it is.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you watch Mean Girls as an adult, you're like, it captured the essence of what useless drama there was in high school.
It's heightened for sure, but like there is truth to it. And I think like Superbad has that feeling of like when you're an adult and watching this, you kind of think about your experiences in a nostalgic way. And then like you said, it has like a lot of heart to it. I think a lot of that is due to the core of this movie, which is these two friends that are for the first time gonna separate once they go to college, and they've been together since they were 8 years old. And the first 40 minutes is everyone basically asking them is like, what are you guys gonna do when you're not together?
Yeah, there's this constant looming threat of Dartmouth throughout the entire thing that Jonah Hill's character, Seth, keeps bringing up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very backhanded all the time, always very like, oh, well, you know, oh, because I didn't get into Dartmouth. You know, he always has to mention it. And I remember even like the big scene, you know, the famous flashback scene where, you know, Seth used to draw pictures of penises.
Oh, yeah.
You know, of course, you know, I remember in school, funny enough, we studied that scene because it was one of the few examples of flashbacks that work only because it's funny. It doesn't add context to the story, or it doesn't really come back in any meaningful way. It's just funny. However, now I disagree with it because...
Interesting, because you've always given that scene to me as an example of like, if something's funny, you can just put it in and it'll work.
And that rule still applies. Don't get me wrong, that rule still applies. But the flashback does characterize the character of Seth more, because what I think it does is his resentment towards Becca is him trying to prevent Evan from spreading his wings more. You know what I'm saying? Because that's his whole thing. He's always under threat of Evan going somewhere else or leaving him alone. That's his like biggest fear, right? If you had to identify Seth's biggest fear is being left alone by his friend. He has this kind of sad sack nature to him, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's even just that scene, like that same scene when he tells that whole story, right? And then Evan has to leave. And Seth's like, what am I supposed to do? Have dessert by myself? Like, that guy, what's his name?
I forget his name. You can look it up momentarily.
I'm going to look up his name.
Okay, cool. It's good that you look these things up to get to the bottom of the important issues on this show. I've actually, you know what's funny though, is I looked up a GIF of that moment to send to you once as a joke, and his name straight up was in there.
Yeah, it's I gotta sit and eat my dessert alone like I'm Steven Glansberg.
Steven Glansberg, that's what it is.
And the movie cuts to a shot of Steven Glansberg just like quietly on.
I mean, we always got to give a shout out to like the lesser known characters in these teen movies. Like I think of like Glenn Coco from Mean Girls.
Yes,
as that like fall for you, Glenn Coco. We don't know jack shit about Glenn Coco, but we remember him.
They made an impact. Well, this whole movie, I think we're gonna talk about it. This whole movie, what I love about it so much, is everyone's funny. Yes. Like everyone, I mean, Steven Glansberg is the butt of the joke, but the cut to him is still funny. The liquor store cashier, she's so funny. The way she's like, I got veterinary school next day, like, yeah. Or whatever. The liquor store, like, not the owner, the liquor store, like, worker, who's like, sir, did you do this? Fuck my life. Like,
yeah.
And everyone that they come across in this world is funny. It just feels like there was this care taken care of, like, there's no small parts. And it's a thing that I think on this podcast, we always talk about, like, no small parts.
Well, that's what I mean by, like, it has the Richard Linklater kind of energy to it, because it feels like none of them are, like, actors. And obviously, like, they're not recognizable. I'm not really trying to say that, but they don't feel like people they got from, like, a CW casting call. They all feel like just random people that they pulled and just said, like, hey, do you want to do this? You know, because they all just, like, all of them have, like, looks. Like, everyone in this movie has a look.
That's a good point. Like, you remember everyone specifically just off one scene. Like, even like take Jonah Hill and Michael Cera, for instance, too. Like, since this movie, we've seen them in so many other projects. I mean, Jonah Hill specifically, we've seen him in so many other comedies, right? Doing different stuff. And it's a version of this neurotic dude that's spewing off like dialogue like crazy. A lot of it's riffing, a lot of it's improv. But when I watched this movie, 5 minutes into it, after they've had that whole conversation about what website Jonah Hill really wants to subscribe to, I forget that those are actors. I believe that these are friends that have known each other since they were 8 years old.
I know, and it's so funny because they so don't look like actual teenagers, but they feel like them so well. The way they kind of hold onto their backpacks and awkwardly walk, and like...
I think I've told you recently that we need to get back to just casting good actors and not age-appropriate actors. Like, I'm fine. I think there's a reason why, like, when back in the day, high schoolers were fucking 25-year-old actors. Because guess what? They were good.
I know. There's, like, overcorrections where I think of, like, Grease, where they look way too old.
True.
I love Grease. I love Grease. Well, I'm not saying I wouldn't change a thing about Grease.
Well, there's a in one of the Greasers that's with Danny Zuko, there's one guy that straight up looks like he's 45.
I know which one you're talking about too. He's the one who's like, I'm not going to take any more crap from the principal.
Yeah, the one that's like,
Yeah.
does she have a friend?
Yeah, yeah. And also, just for the record, strike that. I would change a lot of things about Grease if I could, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Just to kind of cover my ass a
Yeah,
little bit.
guys, Chris is big on rewriting Grease.
Yeah. I want to take back Grease and just change it.
Let's take back Grease. I want to touch on a little bit of our first times watching this movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what about you? How old were you?
I was 12 years old when I first saw it. I went and saw it in theaters. I think my dad didn't expect it to be as like over the top and raunchy as it was, because I think we just were expecting kind of like, oh, it's a comedy movie, just whatever. I don't know. I was 12, you know what I'm saying? But I wasn't used to seeing movies like that when I was at that age. The first R-rated movie I ever saw in theaters was Resident Evil Extinction. That's the third one. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why I remember it so fondly, but that movie was terrifying to me when I was like a kid. But with that being said, I thought it was really funny, but it was also like a lot for me. It was like I didn't want to repeat anything to my friends how gross it was.
Well, and it's also like nerve-wracking when you're a kid watching that kind of movie with your parents. Like, you don't want to laugh too hard, because then they'll suddenly think, like, what stuff is he watching at home that he gets these jokes? Like,
oh yeah, yeah. It's still to this day that applies.
Totally.
Like, if I see movies that make jokes about weird BDSM stuff, I'm gonna just play innocent. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I have not. I don't know. No, okay. I think that leads into my first time watching it, which was in college, which was pretty late. I mean, considering like how old people usually were when they were watching this. But like for me, rated R movies was not something that I was watching a lot of when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was very straight edged. Like, I was like the perfect poster child for any parent, because it was like I was only interested in watching stuff that was age appropriate for me. Like, I was like, okay, well, I'm 16, so I would like these shows and these movies because it's meant for me. I'm certain age, so I'm not going to watch Simpsons. I'm going to watch Danny Phantom, and like that's what I'm going to watch. You know what I mean? So I was never even into being like, let me watch Family Guy because that's a little bit edgier, you know? I was like, no, I'll just watch Very Odd Parents because it's fine. That's what I'm supposed to watch.
Did you do it because you thought you were supposed to, but you secretly wanted to watch the other stuff? Or did you really think like, I shouldn't be watching that?
No. But it's not even like I shouldn't because it's bad. And it wasn't like, it was just, I had no interest in it.
Okay, fair enough. Because I think I was watching like Family Guy and South Park when I was around 11 or 12. Like I started pushing it a little bit.
Yeah, I had no interest because I thought it would be like, well, I won't get it because I'm not an adult.
That's so nice though, isn't it?
I was like the most naive kid ever. And I think for parents, it was just like a dream. So like for me, my first rated R movie was in theaters. The first rated R movie I ever saw was Sacha Baron Cohen's The Dictator.
Oh, wow. I think you've told me that before. You might have even shared that with me, I think, in the Little Miss Sunshine podcast.
This is quite embarrassing, but I was very like, me and a couple of my friends, we're all Muslim, so it was kind of just funny to us that Sacha Baron Cohen was doing this movie, you know what I mean? And me and my friends were just like, let's sneak into The Dictator. So we like bought tickets to this like Tim Burton produced movie. It was not him directing it, but it was Tim Burton produced like animated movie.
Gotcha. Okay, like Frankenweenie or one of those. Or no, I think Frankenweenie he actually did.
It's like a vampire based movie. I forget what it was.
Okay.
But we bought tickets to that movie and snuck into The Dictator. And it was like this, ooh, look at us at The Dictator. And we were like, it's okay. But like, for me, that was like my rated R movie experience for the first time. And it's such a wild thing to say, because I think I was very straight edged back during that time, you know?
I was straight edged in terms of what I actually did, not just with the movies and media that I consumed, but like throughout my teenage years, I didn't drink ever. I didn't do drugs ever.
Likewise.
Yeah, like I was, we were both pretty pure people, you know?
Yeah. But I think the thing we probably did share the way with Seth and Evan is just like uncontrollable horniness.
I mean, all of us were, right? Like,
well, that's what this movie is tackling really well, and it's the reason why I'm surprised that it ages so well. And I want to explore that, but it's just like these characters from the first minute, all they're thinking about is sex.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what high school is kind of like at that time, where your mind is just, your hormones are exploding, your body's exploding, and all you can think about is that.
Yeah.
Of like to the point where Seth is talking to Evan. It's like, yeah, when I'm in college, I'm thinking about what website I should subscribe to. And I think what really sells their friendship and sells their age, even though they're obviously not high schoolers in real life, is when Evan picks up the phone and he's like, which one is Fantastic Voyage? Like like there's no
Doesn't remotely react or have any like discomfort about it. Like that's just what they talk about all the time.
yeah, this is every morning. And I was like, that immediately sells that you guys are in high school. You guys are that age, even though you don't look it, and you guys are best friends. Yeah. That seems like doing a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of table setting.
And also establishing that they're going to be living separately. They're not going to be in the same college. When he meets his mom, he's like, what are you guys going to do without each other? You know what I mean?
It's like, well, I'm going to cry. But, you know, secretly, that's really what the core conflict is there. And it's just simmering the entire time, you know, because obviously they're going on their whole misadventure of getting the fake ID and getting the booze for the girls and all this stuff. But that's like the underlying, you know, conflict and tension that makes it elevated a lot more than other teen comedies.
Yeah, completely. Why do you think, like, with this movie, like, what about this movie ages better than American Pie? Now, this is an obvious dumb question, but I just want you to explore that for a second.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest, most obvious thing is it doesn't glamorize teen chaos and debauchery and hedonism, whatever you want to call it. You know, it shows that it's funny, it has those elements, but it doesn't make it look cool necessarily.
It kind of makes it look pathetic.
A little bit, totally, and it's kind of real. Like, I mean, obviously the biggest thing that I respect about the movie is how at the end, how neither of them get laid like they were planning on it, except McLovin. He's the only one that did, you know. But their whole goal was pretty shitty. You know, their whole goal was to get the girls inebriated so they'd be down to sleep with them. But Evan's character realizes that this is actually really gross and this is not what I thought it would be. This is not cool. And I think that's a big fucking difference between that and a lot of other teen movies, is that they romanticize and glamorize it for kids to think that that's good behavior or like normal.
The key to that sentiment is Evan in the bathroom trying to get shit drunk so he can match Becca's.
Exactly. And it's like, he even in his drunkenness, he's like, this is really not good. You know, I don't like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, as we're talking about this too, so Michael Cera is like the standout for me with this movie. I think the performance here is unbelievable. And as you were talking about that sequence too, as we were talking about like him in the bathroom getting drunk, and then I started thinking about the scene where like him and Becca are making out on the bed. And forgive me for the crudeness, but I mean, like, you guys, it's a Superbad podcast. I mean, what are we going to do here? But the line that like gets me so much is just like, you have such a smooth cock. And it's like, oh, thanks. You would too if you were a man. Yeah.
I know. Again, I was 12 when I saw this in theaters with my dad.
Uncomfortable. I think we should take a step back and kind of just talk about, like, this movie is unbelievably funny. Like, yes. Unbelievable. Dude, I've seen this movie so many times now. For this podcast, in the span of 2 weeks, I saw it twice. And I just couldn't believe the first 40 minutes, especially, just to, like, recap to our viewers and listeners what happens, is the most iconic shit that you think of with this movie. The Fantastic Voyage conversation with the phone call. The shot of Jonah Hill and Jules making the tiramisu and Jonah Hill doing all those like dirty gestures.
Yeah.
What's up, gangsters? All that line. The McLovin scene. And then the liquor store scene where we first meet Slater and Michael, Seth Rogen and Bill Hader. That's all happening within the first 40 minutes. I mean, it is moving.
Yeah.
I think this is like where I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were writing this movie since they were 13.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
Was that did you know that story when you were becoming a film fan and when you knew that you wanted to get into filmmaking, specifically writing? Did you know about that story?
I did. Yes.
And was that kind of inspiring?
Absolutely. I think, you know what's funny, going off of that, when I was going to screenwriting school, I remember early on, we were all asked to write down what's a movie you wish you wrote or wish you made, kind of thing. And I wrote Superbad, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny though? Everyone wrote way fucking smarter movies than I did, of course, you know, like Drive and all these things. And then the teacher reading Superbad, there was like a quiet giggle. And I remember like being totally embarrassed, thinking like, oh, I'm the immature, stupid one now, aren't I? Like, but I think that's what led to us studying that flashback in class, because like the teacher kind of acknowledged it and was like, okay, well then if that's the movie which you wrote, let's get into it.
Let's explore that.
And so, yeah, we already said it, but it is just the heart that really makes it. It just elevates it so much fucking higher because it still has the work put into it like an actual movie. You know, it's not just there to be like, oh, let's put a bunch of dirty jokes, you know, let's make it as gross as possible.
I think what connects with me a lot, hearing, especially finding out that it was Seth and Evan Goldberg, and they started writing this movie when they were like 16. Mm-hmm. What connects with me a lot is that they were open enough to make fun of themselves. Like, it never feels like they're making Seth and Evan look any cooler than they are. You know what I mean? And there's some things, like, you hear stories of Seth Rogen talking about, he's just like, when that girl, as Seth says, perioded on my pants.
Yeah. On his leg.
Seth Rogen said, he was like, no, that happened to us. Like, we were in a locker room after, like, prom night, and we were like, oh my God, dude, what's on your leg? Like,
I actually didn't know that part was true too.
Yeah, he's like, that didn't happen to Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, but that happened to someone they knew.
They've been in that situation before.
And so a lot of these stories, they're like pulling from real life. And I think there's this like level of honesty of just like, during that time, we're just horny and we're pathetic. Like, it's like this openness that I really appreciate.
Absolutely. And it trusts its comedy to be in just the awkward situations. And it doesn't need to be over the top. Like, you don't need Jason Biggs gluing his hand to his penis to like be funny. Don't get me wrong. I respect American Pie. You know, I could feel you about to defend it. Like, I get it. But I'm just saying, though, that, like, the comedy is just Jonah Hill wandering over to the girls to be like, hey, it's me. like that's funny as shit, you know? And
when he's just
relatable.
When Jules, Emma Stone, by the way, her first on-screen performance.
Yeah. Shout out Emma Stone.
I mean, great first movie, by the way.
She's so good in this movie.
She's really good. And it's like that inkling of like, oh, this is someone that's going to be around for a while, because she's got amazing comedic timing and just is charming immediately, right? But when Jules and her friend are just like, oh, Seth, we were just talking about you. He's like, oh, hey, yeah, it's me.
And I think going off of the other thing that makes it age well, too, is it treats its female characters pretty fucking respectfully. You know, their behaviors, they're very nice people. They're very likable characters. They're not just used as objects to be like, oh, she's a hot chick. Let's watch her take her clothes off in the locker room. It's none of that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When Jonah Hill's put on the spot, when he realizes that she doesn't drink, and I think Jonah Hill has that realization of like, oh, I'm a fucking loser. I'm trying to get this girl drunk so I can like hook up with her. It's purely selfish.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that something that's very endearing about this movie is that both girls are already kind of into Seth and Evan. So they're not like, we got to trick these girls into liking us. They're both like from the beginning kind of into them. Like that scene with Jules and Seth in the home ec class. Like Jules is actually kind of charmed by Seth, and like she makes jokes with him. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Becca is like very much into Evan. And both of them like kind of have to learn that we just gotta be ourselves. We're pretty good. But I think it's a very real thing that I think about a lot is like, you know, the story I have in my head is girls weren't into me in high school, right? That's the story I tell myself. And watching this movie makes me think of like how many girls were probably into me, but my ass couldn't be myself.
Oh, it's so true. And that's universal. I'm sure most, you know, guys can connect with this, and a lot of women, I'm sure too.
Sure.
But
guys have that problem where they think they have to be macho. They have to be cool. And like, it's always that feeling when you go back to your hometown and a girl will just be like, I always kind of liked you.
Totally.
And you're just like, fuck, man, you idiot.
I've 100% had that happen where I've had an old flame. You know, when I say old flame, no one I actually dated or anything. It was kind of the opposite. It was more like someone I was good friends with, and the tension was always kind of there between us, but neither of us ever made a move. And years later, we're living across the state from each other. I remember we flirted over like text or chat or something, and I remember she was like, oh no, I used to feel the same way. And I remember being like, God, and she was like, yeah, no, it always made me mad. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, no, but that's kind of just the through line all the time during high school is that we constantly think we have to be someone else in order to get the girl, or get the guy or whoever, right? get your sexual desired partner. And I think it's just like you learn as time goes on is we're just being idiots.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. We hadn't, I mean, both Seth and Evan could have easily just asked these girls on wholesome dates.
And Evan is kind of like, he's got the right idea, right? Like Evan is kind of leaning towards the correct direction more than Seth is. Yeah. Even like simple things as like, well, no, it's always good to be prepared. Yeah, I have a condom and this spermicidal lube.
I know. It's so upsetting to watch now how much Jonah Hill just completely rips into him for it,
but
too.
That's like...
But like that's such a responsible thing to do as a teenager.
But for Seth, it makes sense, right? For the character, is that like he is someone that's so neurotic and on like 1,000 that he doesn't want to fuck up anything. Like, I don't want to look creepy. I don't want to look like this and everything.
Well, it's all insecurity. It's all fear and insecurity, completely just like exploding like with nails everywhere. Like basically, yeah, that's his whole thing. Is that I think because he didn't think to do that. Basically, that's really what it was. He didn't think to do something like that.
Yeah.
So therefore, like, I don't want to look bad that I didn't come prepared, so I'm going to make fun of my friend for doing it and make him look stupid so I feel better about myself.
Totally. 100%. I feel like I relate to this movie, and I feel more than I relate to any John Hughes movie. I feel like this movie is more special to me than those John Hughes movies are. Even though we did a podcast on Ferris Bueller and I just like felt I love that movie, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to just like an actual like, oh, I feel seen and heard, it's more Superbad than anything. Just because I feel like the John Hughes movie, it's more of like looking back at this time, you know? And there's still themes that are extremely resonant. I mean, you can watch Breakfast Club today and still connect to it. But I feel like Superbad feels more like the millennial John Hughes movie. It feels like more for us, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like what's interesting though is because of how timeless it is. Like it doesn't feel like, literally millennial, like, oh, it has MySpace and these certain things.
No, that's not what I mean. Yeah.
But it captured like just an experience, like if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think it's also exciting to like watch, not I guess, but like see like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg finally be able to call their shot and make the movie they've always wanted to make. And then you see these people, like you see Michael Cera and Jonah Hill bloom, and then we've seen them in other movies.
Emma Stone too. Emma Stone just won an Oscar.
Yeah, for the second time.
Yeah.
And
she's won 2 Oscars.
She won for La La Land.
No shit, she did, huh?
Yeah,
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, she won for La La Land.
That's crazy. Okay.
And then you see like Seth Rogen and Bill Hader as Slater and Michaels, right? And even that is just like, oh, these people have been like, for us, these are our guys.
Yeah, they're like our comedy characters that helped us through.
Comedy actors, like writers and everything, right? Like Bill Hader for us is like I'm pretty confident in saying like Bill Hader's kind of like a hero for me. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is a guy that like I watched on SNL when I was younger, and I thought he was like the funniest person alive, thought he could do anything. And then he's in Superbad, like one of my favorite high school comedies, and like he showed up in a lot of those like Seth Rogen, Judd Apatow comedies, right? Mm-hmm. As like a shaggy-haired side character. And then he makes Barry, which is just like, it's inspiring to see him do all these things. Yeah. So I think Superbad is, along with connecting to the movie's themes, it's also just exciting seeing all these people being able to come together and make a project so early on. And then, in your own head, they're only going to get better.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this movie.
It's
lot
like
of
the
blooming.
Root of it.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of seeds being planted. For sure.
There's one actor, and not to throw any shade, there is one actor in this that, like, had a successful career, but unfortunately was pigeonholed. And that's Christopher Mintz-Plasse as Fogo.
Yeah.
As McLovin, And it's a type of character that is just like, people are only going to see you as McLovin.
He has such a specific look to him, too.
Is McLovin the funniest part about this movie?
It's so hard to say. It's like taking a single puzzle piece out or something like that. Or like your favorite Jenga piece. Like I can't see it that way. I see it as like all of them work together well. Like McLovin would not work if it wasn't for him bouncing off of the cops, too.
When he first shows up, though, I don't laugh any hard. Like, when he first shows up, he's like, "Sup, gangsters?"
Yeah, chicka, chicka, yeah, whatever he does. And it's funny? I think we all have, like, that one friend. And I think You know who McLovin reminds me of? I'm not going to
Who?
throw anyone under the bus, obviously, but you know,
Who?
you know what? Let's just bleep it
Let's
out.
bleep it out.
We'll bleep it out.
Yeah. Oh my god.
He's literally who he is.
My god. No, completely. Yeah.
Like literally, he's always that one friend who just
Well,
is
you're
there,
just
like,
kind of like, what the fuck?
like, what's
is
he
your-
doing here, man?
But okay, even the thing about Fogel that's at the end of the movie, what's cool about him is that he was only himself.
Exactly. That's the critical difference between the person we just referenced that we know in person.
And he kind of had the best fucking night.
He did. Well, by far he did. Yeah, he was the most like straightforward. Obviously, he was pretending to be 21 or 25 the whole time or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was very clearly just going along for the ride, enjoying himself.
So this is how I'm going to connect it back to Fogel and Bill Hader and Seth Rogen, because that's like, honestly, that part of the movie is just like a gem. That's like, that part of that storyline of Officer Slater and Michaels being one of the worst cops you've ever seen in movies, accompanying this kid who you later find out they always knew he was underage.
Yeah, but they were just like, oh, we want to show you that cops can be cool too.
I think it's inspiring to see Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg make this movie, right? Because you're like, wow, that's like the dream for people who want to be filmmakers, is to write a movie with your best friend and then getting to make it. And not only that, it becomes like one of your greatest works.
Oh,
and
it's a classic.
And it's a movie that still plays today so well. I mean, you and I are talking about it in 2024.
Yeah.
And but it's also inspiring is because the movie that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg always talk about as like a movie that they were obsessively watched is an obvious one, but it's Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's obvious. Like when you're a teenager, like Pulp Fiction is possibly the coolest thing you could ever watch. And they talked about how like they were like they would obsessively watch those kind of movies, those 90s independent cinema movies, and they would like rewatch them over and over again. They said they even made a sketch of the Christopher Walken scene where instead of like the ring that he stuck up his ass,
the watch,
sorry, where he was like, I stuck this uncomfortable hunk of metal up my ass.
Yeah.
Instead, they had him hold a menorah. So they did that entire scene, but he's holding this huge
it's huge with all these like candles.
And when I watch the scene with Officer Slater and Michaels, that scene comes from them watching like 90s independent cinema, watching Pulp Fiction and this like absurd side story that's going on. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And having that sense of, well, going off of like what we said earlier about the kind of Richard Linklater, no small parts, is that Pulp Fiction did that really well too by feeling like a community.
Well, Tarantino has done that all the time.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, the guy like who you saw at this bar is going to come back later in this movie through another scene. Same way how the liquor store owner who's like, sir, did you drop these beers, comes back later in the house party full of liquor. And it feels suddenly like this world you built.
You know what's funny about that is I discovered that was the same guy literally this most recent rewatch.
Really?
I did not catch that it was him the entire time.
Oh, man.
And it was like, oh shit, wait, that's him.
I'm gonna shout that guy out right now. The liquor store clerk who had a veterinary exam the next day. Her name was Erica Bettina Phillips, and the liquor store clerk that comes back later, the actor's name was Joe Nunez.
Okay.
So great in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but a couple weeks ago when we decided that we want to do Superbad, and you and I watched this movie again for the podcast separately. I remember we were kind of discussing, okay, what are some of the talking points that we want to really hit on during this podcast? And in my mind, up to that point, I was like, okay, obviously we'll discuss the bond of these friends. You and I can really relate to that, obviously, as friends. And I was kind of struggling to think of like what else to pull. You mentioned something that I didn't take into offense at all. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't thought about before, of just like Seth's entire character is this like he's in constant fear and insecurity of losing his friend, and all of that is informing every single part of his actions, and he's super neurotic, and he's also has a one-track mind.
Yeah.
Fogel is being interrogated by the cops. Seth is like, fuck the money, we gotta get the alcohol. Okay, what's the next plan? We gotta do this. Okay, shut up about that. It doesn't matter. Fogel's gone. And you told me that it was just like, I know you've had issues with that before, of just like having that one track mind, insecure about losing friendship, insecure about loneliness and everything. And I was like, I remember it clicked with me when you mentioned it.
It
And I'm
unlocked something in you.
And I'm like, I never thought about it that way. Now, again, I want to stress to like the viewers and listeners, I didn't take offense to Chris saying that because it just made me realize I'm like, oh yeah, that is something I struggle with, and it's a way I never thought of connecting to this movie.
Well, yeah, I think when I mentioned that to you on the phone, I think I just assumed you already knew that a little bit, like, or you felt something with that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, I think it's just a very common friend dynamic, isn't it? There's usually like, one wants to go one direction, then it's like a threat to the other person.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that we're doing this podcast because we're recording 2 podcasts today. And the episode that we're doing next is another movie that deals with a bromance, a male friendship, in a different way, through a different light. I don't want to spoil the movie we're doing, but it's just interesting that both these movies have to do with these 2 guys.
Yeah.
Male friendship is something that just fascinates me in movies. It's something that I always connect to. You know what I mean? Just because I've had many different friend groups throughout my life, as I'm assuming you have and everything. But until I met you, I've never had a friend like you, where it was just like, we just speak the same language in a way that I've never spoken the same language with someone. And you don't get that like all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when I watch this movie, and when Seth and Evan are on the phone with each other, or when they're just talking to each other casually and everything, I'm just like, oh, they're in the same frequency.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for sure. We do speak the same language. We have the same type, like, sense of humor and the same kind of values. If that makes any sense?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean like you and I don't agree on everything. We have our fights, they have their fights, but at the end of the day, it's that thing of when Seth and Evan have that huge rift, they have that like fight, and like Seth is like, you just abandoned me, you ran away, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like when the cops come in and break up that party, Seth gets Evan out of there, carries him and everything.
Yeah.
And
that's what I mean by like, that's the pulse of this movie too. There's like a legitimate argument scene that plays it straight.
But what I liked about it is that there's this feeling, I bet you have this too, where it's just like when you're like that close with someone, like as like a friendship, something I've experienced is that you and I have had some gnarly fights, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I think there's a feeling that we both know. I'm just like, yeah, but this is not gonna end the friendship. Like, this is not like,
yeah, it's like family. It's like the brothers get mad at each other and brothers fight. It happens,
And it's that feeling that is just like, well, we're for life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Seth and Evan, they're gonna fight and everything, and it's a movie, so they're gonna make up. But at the same time, they know that like, well, we're for life. No one's gonna speak the same language like we do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where it's like no one messes with him but me, kind of thing.
Totally, yeah. And well, it's also the scene that also expresses that is when they're like in the soccer field and like Jonah Hill comes in like heavy breathing, which like, again, Jonah Hill is at like 1,000 this entire movie. He's always running from something, running at something.
Always in fear. That's literally his whole character. He's always in fear, pretty much.
He comes in after Becca says like after Jules wants him to buy alcohol, and he interprets as like, she thought of me, she wants to sleep with me. There's no way.
Yeah.
And
the famous line, we just got to give a shout out to it. It's still reused. She wants to fuck me. She wants my dick in around her mouth.
Mama wants some puby salad. Mama made some puby salad. She wants Seth's own dressing.
It's so, okay, I don't know about you, but it's like, you and I are generally pretty wholesome on our shows. Yeah. When you do the reactions on Nice Dude Movie Night, and when you talk here, what we curse, but we don't get, so it's weird quoting like gross shit.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I just knew with this movie, we can't get around that.
No, totally. And I'm sure people clicking on it know what the deal is,
But what I'm trying to get to is that through the beginning of this movie, it's been established that like Evan's the like straight-minded one, and Seth's like the crazy dude. And there's this, but when it comes down to the whole thing, I'm just saying they're on the same frequency, is Dave Franco comes in and he's just like, come in, why are you just standing there? Come in the game. And just like, Evan's like, chill out, man. It's soccer. And then like Seth also turns around and he was just like, go piss your pants somewhere. He's like, that was 8 years ago, assholes. Like, people don't forget.
Yeah, of course.
And it's even in that scene, it's established as like, they're both in on ragging on this dude immediately.
Yeah, they got each other's backs at the end of the day.
Exactly. And it's like funny, small scenes like that. And then also heartfelt scenes of him carrying him.
Yeah.
tackle that. That's also what's impressive about this movie, is that this movie constantly will have an endearing, sincere moment matched with a joke, but the jokes never undercut the sincere moment.
Yeah, they complement each other.
When they say I love you to each other, it's not undercut with like, okay, weird, gross football. That happens like the next morning when they're both kind of hungover and they talk about video games or whatever. But like during that scene when they're saying that they love each other, they love each other.
Yeah, and it's like, obviously it's funny, but it's funny because it's like cute. You know, it's not funny because like, oh, that's gay or whatever. Nothing like that. You know, but it's like kind of, it's very wholesome. It's very adorable that he just pokes his nose like boop, boop, boop.
Can you talk a little bit about well, I think you already addressed it, but I kind of want you to talk about Project X, because you've always had like a sharp opinion about that movie.
Yeah, well, okay, so I hated it when it came out. When I was like, I think I was like 16 or 17 when it came out.
And it was already being called of like, oh, another like Superbad and everything. But it became an enormous hit.
Yeah, and basically Project X, I won't say that I hate it now because I haven't watched it in over 10 years or whatever, so I'm not just gonna, I don't remember the characters, I don't remember a lot of details, but the idea of it, the energy it gave off, I'll always resent.
Because I think you've told me before that you felt like, and I agree with you, is that it learned all the wrong lessons from Superbad.
Yes, it basically, it's the shit that I said earlier, where like there's a whole scene when they crack open that vase and a bunch of ecstasy's in it, and then everyone's taking it, and it's all cool that they take it. Nothing happens out of any of it. You know what I'm saying? There's just a lot of that stuff that just, it gets under my skin, because that movie's clearly made for people, you know, kids.
For
essentially,
specifically dudes.
Exactly. For specifically dudes. And again, female characters, like we said earlier, you know, not treated the way that Superbad does it, you know, at all. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the characters just openly cheat on each other and there's nothing of it.
Totally.
You know, I don't want to sound like a super square being like, you know, oh, bad behavior. Like I'm down for debauchery and crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
make it funny at the least. And make it funny. It's not even funny because like if you want to make a movie about horrible people, right? That's fine. Like, you know, like I'm down for South Park or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But there's no like wit or there's no real thing that it has to say other than just being like, look, they're going from nerds to cool guys. That's the movie. And you know why they're cool? It's because there's a little person in the oven.
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole movie is based off this, like, this is an insane party. Yeah. Right? So, like, I think, like, for me, I'm not a huge fan of that movie. I don't have the same level of hate that you have. But I watch that movie the same way I watch American Pie. I'm just like, oh, this is just insane and silly. But I don't have like this like connection or like love for it the way I have for Superbad. Because Superbad is able to be like, this is extremely funny and crazy, but then able to have this heart that I think is the reason why this movie is remembered.
Yeah, but what's funny though is like the craziness we talk about with Superbad isn't that crazy. You know what I mean? They just get a little drunk at the end of the night.
I guess the wildest thing that happens in the movie is the period.
Yeah, which isn't, I mean, like it's really awkward and, you know, whatever, it's funny. But most of the humor is just the awkwardness of the characters and their interaction, their dialogue with each other.
Yeah.
You don't need to create like, you know, because, you know, like in American Pie when he finishes in the cup and then it gets drank, like it doesn't need to rely on that kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Totally. So the guy that runs into Seth with his car.
Oh, yeah.
When they're outside of the liquor store, right after an amazing, I like an iconic scene where they look at that woman who like got breast reduction surgery. And Seth's just like, I gotta take a look at those warlocks.
Yeah, yeah.
There's this ridiculous moment where they're just like running. Anyways. Yeah, so I wrote down the actor's name here.
He's the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right?
Yeah. So
I haven't seen a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I've seen enough to recognize that dude.
Joe Latruglio.
Okay.
He's really funny in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But he plays like this coked out party guy that has no money, runs into Seth accidentally, and he's just like, okay, there's a lot of liquor at this party, I know. He's basically my best friend. I can take you guys there. And Seth and Evan are both sitting in the back seat. And it's that feeling that I think both you and I have had where it's just like, oh, okay, we're at the wrong place right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've all had that, whether it was in high school or even a little bit later in life, we've all had that moment where we're just like, okay, this is wrong. I shouldn't be here.
Or like it's getting weird. It's getting weird. I don't know about wrong every time, but sometimes it's like, oh, I'm safe, right? Or okay, like this is all fine.
Okay. I think we both have separate stories because we discussed this a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first or should I go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Why not? I'm
Yeah.
here. I think my one, I've had a couple, weird nights, but I think the weird one that I mainly think of is me and a girlfriend at the time went out with some friends and couldn't get into a club we were trying to go to because we learned that a certain friend of ours, like this club was 21 and up only, and we thought it was 18 and up.
And you were 21.
I was 21 at the time, but there are some people in the friend group who were like 19.
Okay.
And so we couldn't get in. We were trying to figure out what to do. But meanwhile, this other like full like SUV pulled in that was in an Uber of a group of people. They heard us trying to figure out what to do. And they're like, oh, are you guys trying to figure out where to go? Oh, we're having this party up in the hills if you want to just come with. And we were like, sure. Like, because we were a bunch of fucking dumb early 20-year-olds.
And I mean, like, if someone's inviting you to party up in the hills, I'm like, well, this is going to be a story. This is going to be a night.
Yeah, exactly. And so we get in the car. We
Insane. Already crazy. Just
a bunch of strangers. Yeah. Yeah. And so basically the driver was getting along with everyone. I can't remember what he was, like a funny, cool dude.
Uber driver.
Yeah. The Uber driver. Because like literally just made a stop and called an Uber, and the Uber was coming in. They just said like, hey, you want to come with us? And so they ended up inviting the Uber driver to come party with us too.
Okay.
And so the Uber driver got out and all of us just went into the house.
So at a certain point, the story's kind of just like, oh, this is like a goofy story. The Uber guy was so cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, I could see that going well too. I'm just like, oh, we met this really cool Uber driver. But then, yeah.
Yeah. And so we get to the house, and the house is like really fucking nice. I actually still to this day don't know whose house it was, but it was really nice.
Sure.
Because I was pretty plastered at this point.
Okay.
And so we go hang on the backyard, and then eventually some people get invited upstairs, and I'm pretty sure looking back the implication was everyone was going up to probably do coke or something.
Mm-hmm.
And me and the Uber driver were talking privately, like, hey, we should probably get people out of here, this is getting weird,
Okay.
And so we go back to my place, and the Uber driver was kind of lingering.
So the Uber driver was at your place?
Oh yeah, he came inside my house, or my apartment at the time.
Crazy.
And he was hanging out, and it was like, I'm kind of breezing by details.
It's already nuts to take your Uber driver to a second location. Like a second location with the Uber
this
driver.
guy was like, he clocked out and was hanging out with us, and I never saw him again after this. But by this point, though, when we got to my place, it was probably like 5 a.m. It was getting like dumb late. And so he gets in, we realize he's kind of lingering, and he was like hanging out. He was like, oh, we should order food. Are you guys hungry? And we're like, I think might be going to bed soon. And kind of awkwardly have to kind of ask him to leave. Never got his contact information. Nothing ever came out of it.
Yeah.
He was not an ongoing friend.
God, an Uber driver to the second location. That's insane. That's such an early 21-year-old move to just be like, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, come over.
Well, and it's funny because you know me now.
Never. You would never.
I wouldn't have even gone out in the first place. By the time I close at midnight, I'm like, I'm out. I'm going to sleep. I'm not doing any of that.
Your vibe is so not the guy who's like, come along. Your vibe is like, it's 10 p.m. I know we're all hanging out. I'm going to bed. And my vibe is like, come on, stay. We're having fun. And you're like, I'm good. And then you leave. And then the next morning you and I talk. And I'm just like, dude, it's good that you left. Like, it got really weird afterwards.
There's always that moment in all outings when it gets weird.
You've perfected the, okay, I'm heading out now at the perfect time. I think
it's a weird curse.
You've gone down to like a skill. It's like crazy, a science.
Sometimes you can just feel it. You can just feel it in your bones. Like, okay, I'm kind of bored. I'm tired. Okay, cool. Go to bed.
I was at a karaoke bar it was for my birthday. Me and my friends went to do karaoke, and it was not karaoke rooms. It was a karaoke bar, so everyone could go up and you were singing in front of everyone. And that's also kind of my vibe for karaoke. I don't like the private rooms. I like the performance aspect of it.
You like putting on a concert?
A little bit. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's the only, I'm a bad singer, but it's the only time where it doesn't matter and I get to be a rock star. When else will I be able to do it? It was a good time, but the karaoke bar we had didn't have food. We all were hungry. And it was around like midnight at this point. And this guy was coming in, handing out like business cards, being like, if you want food, just let me know. And it had his like company name on it too.
Okay.
And we just went up to him and was like, yeah, do you have a food truck? I said, or something. I was like, oh no, like, what do you want? And we're like, what do you have? He's like, oh man, I got like hot dogs, chicken wings, like kind of bar food type stuff. And we're like, okay, cool. Yeah, we love some wings. he was like, yeah, follow me. We followed him outside the karaoke bar. Again, it's like 12:30 a.m. We followed him outside the karaoke bar, and he's like, yeah, it's just right across the street. And right across the street is just this like what looks like an office building.
Okay.
And we're like,
Like a for lease building kind of thing.
yeah. So we're just like, all of us like idiots. We're just like, all right. And
How long ago was this, by the way? Because you're telling the story like you were really young, and I feel like it wasn't that long ago.
I mean, it was 2 years ago.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just to be clear, because you're saying like, oh, like a bunch of idiots. Because my
No.
story was like 7 or 8 years ago.
No, I'm still an idiot. Like,
Fair enough.
So we all we all went and followed, and there was a part of us that were also like, this is gonna be a fun story. So we were like, let's just go. And it was a good group. It was like a decent 5 or 6 of us. We followed him. We go upstairs into this building, and they have like an office, and inside we go in, and there's a guy in the corner making beats. Like, he has like 2 monitors and big speakers, making music, making beats. There's another guy rolling up a joint. And he's just he has like a long blonde hair, and he's like, oh hey, my name is so and so. I forget his real name, but he's like, my name is so and so, but people call me Tommy Pickles. Dead ass. And
In case listeners don't know, by the way, Tommy Pickles is the name of the main baby on Rugrats.
yeah, and we're just like, Tommy Pickles, and he's like, all right, what do you guys want? And outside of the office, he had like a small fryer and some like sauces and stuff like that, and we're like, yeah, we'll just take some Cajun wings, and we just ordered.
You just ordered food, yeah.
And he made us fries and Cajun wings. We all had some, and we're like, all right, let's get out of here.
Was the food good?
It was like, all right. It was not bad.
Was it worth like, the tension?
Yeah, because me and my friends still talk about it. Like, but it was that we had that moment where we were just like, okay, this guy's name goes by the name of Tommy Pickles. There's like 2 fryers, and he's saying that this is his restaurant. And then there's a guy in the corner making beats that didn't turn around the entire time.
What time was it when all this was going down, by the way?
Again, I said 12:30.
Okay, 12:30. Okay.
So by the time we got our food, it was like 1 a.m. And there was a small moment where we were all like, we might die. Who knows? But then afterwards, we just left, and we were like, that was crazy. What the hell were we thinking? So yeah, like it's not quite the level of Michael Cera singing to a bunch of cokeheads, but but it's still pretty funny. Oh my God. Yeah. Like that actor's name, by the way, is right here. I had to find him on IMDb, but Kevin Bresnahan. And he is like,
the one that was snorting?
he's so over the top. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The way he's just like, and my friend came all the way from this place to be here with us tonight, and you're not going to sing? And he's just like, you want some Coke? Yeah. Yeah, that party is the prime version of like, I'm not supposed to be here right now.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They were just kind of like loosely promised we'll get you booze. Yeah, we're going to this cool party. And then you learn that the guy wasn't even invited to it and got his ass kicked right when they get there.
Okay, so you want to talk about now like the final like 20 minutes of this movie?
Yeah. So you want to set the stage like once they get to the party and Jonah Hill has this fucking huge Tide thing full of beer.
Well, there's this. Well, yeah, but right before Seth finds out that Evan and Fogel are gonna be like rooming together.
Yeah.
And they hadn't told Seth. And Seth feels like betrayed, but he goes in with his Tide bottles, right? And then goes in, and the movie goes into slow-mo, plays this music as everyone's cheering. It's kind of like, Seth, this is everything you wanted.
Yeah.
And in Seth's mind is like, I'm going to be the king of this party. You know what I mean? And so the movie shows that really well. Everyone's like, to Seth,
And he's trying to distract himself from the fact that he's kind of losing his friend, too.
Yeah.
Because they just had that brief...
Well, that's what the whole movie is, right? He's like, I need to fuck Jules.
Yeah.
That's his like hyper focus onto that is just because he's going to lose his friend.
Yeah, he wants to feel desired, basically.
Exactly.
And just quick shout out to Fogel's cavalier attitude towards it too. It's like, you haven't told him that we're living together yet?
Fogel is always like that. He was just like, it's staff. Why would you park there?
Yeah, why would you park at staff? You're not staff.
It's like, I know that. Yeah, it's amazing. But anyways, meanwhile, Evan meets up with Becca, who is plastered.
Yes.
And Becca just wants him, right? And it's the opposite is kind of happening with Seth, which is like, Jules goes to talk to him, but kind of like Jules is still into him, but she's like, well, you're drunk.
Yeah.
Not like this, not like this. And Seth is so fucked up, both with losing his friend and his drunk, he can't even take that. And he's like, I'm a loser, accidentally knocks Jules out. And Emma Stone just has a brilliant, what the fuck?
Oh yeah. That's probably her most iconic line in the movie.
The way she delivers that is so funny. But then it's cutting to Evan, who just decides, I'm going to get plastered too.
Yes.
And he just has like this big thing of, what is it, like vodka?
I think so, yeah, some type of hard liquor. But it hurts my stomach just watching him sit in the fucking bathtub alone, taking swigs and like pep talking himself in the mirror. It's so funny because, like, honestly, me personally, sorry, this is TMI. I hate drunk sex. It's just it's like and this is just me personally. My relationship with alcohol is different than a lot of other people's, but like, I get headaches really quickly. I get the hangover while I'm still drunk.
Yeah.
And so it just viscerally like grosses me out, that whole sequence. But again, I like that the movie portrays, like drinking and stuff that way, because it is gross. It's like a sad kind of thing to do, sitting in a bathroom alone trying to get yourself drunk.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the movie is like looking at this as a pathetic thing.
Exactly.
Right? And Evan just walks out after Becca throws up and gets her friend, right? And then Evan's on the sofa talking to his home ec partner. Who that home ec partner is. Like Evan kind of loves him.
I know, when he puts like a little flour on his like little whiskers out of the flour and does a little scratch towards
and that guy is like putting on the apron to Evan, and he's just like, okay, don't take too long.
I know. And they make a great looking tiramisu together. Do you remember the stark difference between their tiramisus?
He's like, great, right? I know, we did a good job. Like, it's just like they're so proud.
I know, like I want to see their own spinoff together.
Yeah, it's like a small part of the movie that I really love. But the Officer Slater and Michaels come in, break the party. Seth and Evan go back to their place, right? And they're coming, it's like their come to Jesus moment a little bit. They're both realizing they fucked up in different ways. This scene, I don't know if you knew, but this scene wasn't in their script originally.
Yeah, I did know that.
And it was none other than Judd Apatow who recommended this scene. He was like, right now what you have is a very fun comedy, right? And you have like this funny bro comedy, and you have some emotional core to it, but this is the scene that's going to tie everything together. Like, you need to have them express their love to each other. And I think Judd Apatow is like, that's his core belief for all the stuff that he's made. Like, I think Seth Rogen and Judd Apatow, all the movies that they make, whether it's together or separately, it's always this absurd, raunchy concept that's kind of like the layer over what's the true emotional core is. Like, and they've done that throughout their entire careers.
I mean, that's his thing. Yeah, he makes the dramedies.
Like, This Is the End is this, like, obviously this satire on Hollywood and ego, like, and everything. But at the core of it, it's about just, like, how people change when they, like, find success in their careers. And, like, Jay Baruchel's character, like, chose to be away from that. But then at the end of the day, he like feels separated from his hometown friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's a joke Nick Kroll made in the Comedy Central roast.
Oh,
James Franco. Yeah. when he was like mimicking what Evan Goldberg must be like. And he was like, hey, Seth, I got a movie about two friends, and they're not friends anymore, and they smoke a lot of weed.
And they become friends again.
And then we'll put, it's like, hey, I cut that fart joke from page 5. And like,
well, yeah, Nick Kroll's whole joke was just like, Seth Rogen's writing partner is Evan Goldberg. What must Evan Goldberg look like that Seth is the face of this operation?
So mean.
Yeah, they say I love you to each other, which is, it's like, I've said I love you to you before many times. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Oh, we jokingly say it in like a British accent when we're on the phone and be like, love you, mate.
It's like the most, that is such a dude thing. To be like, we can't just say I love you to each other. We have to put on an accent. And for Seth and Evan too, they have to like be really drunk and just be like, I love you. But it's a scene that's important that you don't see in this type of movie.
Yeah.
Like, you don't see this in an American Pie. You know what I mean? And I'm not just throwing strays at American Pie. Trust me. I have some fondness for that movie too. But
this is what makes Superbad more elevated than movies like American Pie, is what you're saying, basically.
And ages better too, because that's like, they're going back to the themes of the movie. And it's always the line that gets me is like, I just want to go on top of the, like, I just want to go stand on top of the roof and tell the world that I love my friend.
Yeah. I love you, man. Why don't we say it every day, man?
Boop. They touch each other's noses.
And they're in their sleeping bags and they like come in and hug really tightly.
I know. And
And even like towards the end too, like after, the next day, once they go to the mall and they come across Jules and Becca.
yeah.
They're set up. Both of them are into their guys. They're like, oh, I guess I can give you a ride. Okay, cool.
And they like Jonah Hill goes down the escalator while he's like waving goodbye to
Yeah, there's like this lingering shot while the music's swelling and you can just see Jonah Hill slowly lowering out of frame. And then the camera just backs away into this nice wide over the whole mall.
What I like about it is that it's both very endearing and funny at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Because it's obviously kind of emulating a romantic comedy or something like that. But the movie's not trying to make a joke outwardly. Like the audience is laughing and also it is endearing, right? But it's not undercutting that moment. Like you said, it just pans back. Like it just pulls back and that's the moment. These are two friends that are always going to be friends, even though they're not like stuck together to the hip all the time.
Yeah.
That's the core of it, right? Like just because we're separating doesn't mean we're going to lose this.
Yeah. Yeah. That sort of friendship is irreplaceable.
It might be different, but like I said earlier, with Seth and Evan, with you and me, this shit's for life. Like nothing's going to really come between us, But in order for us to actually grow and, whether it's be with these girls or whatever, like it's okay to have some distance.
Yeah.
It's such a mature concept.
I'm telling you, man, this movie's so much more mature. That's why there's certain movies that kind of piss me off because I think,
Well, I think it's not certain. Like, I think I want to be specific. Like, I don't think you're above, like, you and I, like, I'm only mentioning American Pie because I feel like that movie's been catching a lot of strays. I think you and I both together laugh about American Pie, that movie. We have fun with that.
Absolutely.
I think you're upset at movies like Project X that clearly took a page off of Superbad, but it felt like they didn't really understand why that movie was special.
Absolutely. And yeah, exactly. People who listen to this or watch this most likely know our reaction channel. We like laughing at dumb shit. We're not everything has to have a heart. We know that. You know what I mean? We can bypass that part.
But there's some delicate matters when it comes to teenagers and sex and that relationship.
Exactly.
And like
100%.
And I think Superbad is the perfect example of like you can be very funny and very heartfelt and sincere and mature at the same time.
And gross when you want to be gross.
It's a thing that pisses me off so much of just like when people are like Superbad can't be made today. And I think Seth Rogen tweeted this out perfectly where he was just like, that movie airs all the time to this day on like TBS or whatever. And people are still watching it and quoting it. I'm pretty sure people can digest it.
Yeah.
Like I think Superbad is proof. It's just like, Superbad is not just this offensive, raunchy comedy that couldn't be done today.
No, not at all.
Like, Superbad is the perfect example, right? Like, it's a movie that is mature, and it is a movie that is not offensive. It's making fun of its characters. And people are not dumb. They can see that, So I think it's a great example of what we kind of look for when it comes to these kind of comedies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Yeah. I'm glad we did this, man. I know this is one of your favorite movies in general, and I think being friends with you kind of made me realize how special this movie is, aside from just being funny. So, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
So I think we're good to wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. We really appreciate it. As always, stay nice, dudes.
Booyah.
Can't make booyah a thing, man. It's so offensive. It's offensive to me. Jesus.